What's up? So, I have a question for you. Have you ever felt like you were living the worst day of your life over and over again? Like, no matter what you do, something terrible always happens. Like, you're afraid to experience good things and bliss in life because there's that inevitable shoe drop and you find yourself stuck in a cycle of pain. I know this feeling very well, and I've been there, and I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way, and there is a way out of it. And I want to share my story with you and how I started to see some hope. At one of the worst points in my life, I was living with my parents. I was still married. My husband lived with my parents as well. And I was kind of surrounded by all this chaos. And it was chaotic not only in my environment, but also in my mind. I was being triggered by a lot of stuff. And a lot of things from my childhood were resurfacing, really heavy stuff. And it seemed like I could not escape it or find any relief from it. And even when I was sleeping, it would be like night terrors, awful nightmares, awful things. And it was getting to the point where I didn't know what to do about it. I was like, what am I going to do? And I remember one day going on YouTube, I started searching spirituality, and I started looking for some kind of relief from that feeling, I started seeking, and I've always been an open-minded person and a fairly spiritual person, but I started really diving into it. And I came across this woman who went by psychic medium, Sunshine Rose, and she shared some stuff that really impacted me, and it set me on a path that has changed my life forever. And so what she shared was synchronicity. How the universe can speak to us if we're willing to listen and see the signs. Some of the signs she shared was kind of funny if you think about it. It was just something as simple as repeating numbers. So we see that every day in license plates and social media and our watches and our phones. And the repeating number she shared was 999. And to her, that meant pay attention. And to her, these synchronicities were like messages from her angels. And so she shared this story about how one night when she was batching out from work, she was closing up for the night, the number at the till came out to a long string of nines, and she was familiar with synchronicity, and so this stopped her and caused her to pay attention. And then on her way home that night, she lives in LA. She's on an 8-lane highway. Car passes her, license plate says 999, and she's paying attention. And suddenly she hears this voice in her mind tell her urgently to get into the other lane, like right now. And so she does, and this car comes out of nowhere. If she would have still been in that lane, she would have been in a horrible wreck, So she shared that story, and with that story, she also shared the message that if you need help and you need guidance, your higher power will help you, but you have to ask for that help. We have free will, so we have the choice, but we get to ask, and if we ask, we'll get help. So the next day, after I watched that video, as I'm going through all this mental angst, I'm on my way to go pick up my ex-husband from work, and I'm crying. I'm so emotional. All this stuff is just weighing on my heart, and I didn't know what to do. And I remembered what she said, and I'm like, please help me. I don't know what to do. And suddenly, immediately after I said that, this car comes and passes me on the left. Just like what happened to her, and the license plate said 999, just like what happened to her. And I was like, oh, and that stopped me. kind of got me out of that for a second. I was like, oh. And then, immediately after that, another car comes by, and on the license plate, it says relax. I shit you not, it said relax. That was exactly what I needed to do at that time. I needed to stop, breathe, and relax. Because I was ruminating and focusing on a lot of things that were out of my control. A lot of the stuff that was in my thoughts was things that happened in the past, things that were surfacing that I needed to release, but at the same time, it wasn't healthy for me to continue focusing on that. Because I was adding more chaos to my mind. I was living in a chaotic situation. I mean, it was near the end of my marriage, in the sense that that's when things were starting to fall apart there, and it became obvious it wasn't a healthy situation. It was pretty toxic, and I was living with my parents, and it was becoming very obvious that was toxic. And I had done a lot of self-work up to that point, and I think I reached a point where I was really ready to see that, so the first step was asking for help from your higher power. And then the second step, kind of like looking inward, being like, okay, I need to step back, relax, take a breath. And that set me on a journey. And that journey, I've been guided through that journey to this place through synchronicity. I would not be where I am now without it. I learned through that experience to pay attention to the signs and the little things in my environment, because they hold a lot of meaning. During that time, maybe a couple years previous to that, I had read a book by Dan Millman called Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And this guy goes through this hero's journey and finally comes to this epiphany at the end of the book. He has this kind of like spiritual guide, and the guide had posed the question to him, basically like, what's important? What is the meaning of life, kind of thing. And he had all these answers like world peace, love, blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, no, come back. And so finally he went through all this stuff, and he comes up to his teacher, and he says to him, nothing is trivial and everything is sacred. And that was profound for me at the time, but over time, that has become so much more real on such a deeper level. And that's what I want to share with you, because when you realize that nothing is trivial, you're coming from a space of gratitude for everything that's around you. The good, the bad, all the little tiny coincidences, all the big things. It all has meaning. And when you're living a life that has meaning, you're living a good life. And all too often, I think we get caught up in our chaos, and we get caught up in our worry, and we forget to see the meaning behind it. So that said, I would like to invite you to kind of go on this journey with me, and I will be sharing more of these synchronicities. In fact, yesterday I just had one that I was on my way to the gym, and at the stoplight I saw a car parked that said "Be Joy" on the license plate. These things still continue to this day, and I was like, that's relevant. And what's interesting about that too, to add more layers of meaning to it, I'm also an artist, and so I was commissioned to do this digital art depicting the emotion of depression, which is kind of heavy. And I'm like, depression. And then I was working on that image, and then left where I was, went to the gym, saw that Be Joy thing. I'm like, yeah, that's a message. So I would invite you to listen to my story. I'd like to share it with you. I'd like to share some of my journey with you, and I would invite you to also pay close attention to your own journey. You can do it right now. In the next video, I'll share a recent thing that happened that I believe has led me more fully into my purpose. with the current reality we're experiencing with this pandemic, with the global crises we have with such as pollution and waste and all this other stuff. And I'll go into that in the next video, but I wanted to kind of get you started off with this, just looking for the little things. Have a great day. Thank you for watching. Aloha.